Introduction. The crisis nobody's talking about. Right now, somewhere in the world, two people are facing the exact same crisis. Same circumstances. Same resources available. Same level of difficulty. One will be destroyed by it. They'll spiral into depression, anxiety, or complete dysfunction. They'll still be broken years later, defining themselves by what happened to them. The other will emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. They'll look back on this crisis as the moment everything changed for the better, as a catalyst that forced them to become who they were always meant to be. The difference between these two people isn't luck. It isn't genetics. It isn't circumstances. It's a learnable skill called emotional resilience. And it's the most important capability you'll ever develop. We're living through what psychologists are calling the resilience crisis. Depression rates are at all-time highs. Anxiety disorders are epidemic, affecting nearly 40% of adults at some point in their lives. Suicide rates have increased by 30% in the last 2 decades. Burnout is so common it's now recognized as an official medical diagnosis by the World Health Organization. The mental health system is overwhelmed. Therapists have waiting lists months long. Psychiatric medications are prescribed at unprecedented rates. And despite all our advances in psychology, neuroscience, and treatment options, more people than ever report feeling unable to cope with life's challenges. But here's what's really happening. It's not that life is harder than it used to be. Our ancestors faced wars, famines, plagues, and constant physical danger. Infant mortality was common. Medical care was primitive. Economic security was rare. Physical labor was brutal. Yet depression and anxiety were an epidemic. People weren't fragile. They had resilience built into their lives in ways we've systematically removed. We've bubble-wrapped childhood, eliminating all the small challenges that build stress tolerance. We've created safe spaces that protect people from any discomfort or disagreement. We've taught people that feelings are fragile and must be protected at all costs. We've given everyone trophies regardless of performance, eliminating the experience of loss. We've solved every problem for our children before they learn to solve problems themselves. And the result is a generation that's less equipped to handle adversity than any before it. We've tried to eliminate struggle, not realizing that struggle is what builds strength. It's like trying to build muscle by never lifting anything heavy. You don't get stronger. You get weaker. Your muscles atrophy. And when life inevitably demands strength you haven't built, you break. But emotional resilience isn't just about surviving crisis. It's about thriving through challenge. It's about becoming someone who bends but doesn't break. Someone who falls but gets back up. Someone who faces darkness and finds their way back to light. Someone who uses adversity as fuel for growth rather than evidence of inadequacy. And here's the amazing truth that most people never realize. Resilience is completely learnable. It's not a personality trait you're born with or without. It's not reserved for special people with unique genetics or advantages. It's a set of specific skills, beliefs, and practices that anyone can develop at any age regardless of their history. No matter how many times you've been broken, no matter how fragile you feel right now, no matter how overwhelmed you are by current circumstances, you can build a kind of resilience that makes you virtually unbreakable. This book is your complete guide to that process. Chapter 1. The Neuroscience of Breaking and Bouncing Back. Your brain is not a static organ. It's a dynamic, constantly reorganizing system that responds to every experience you have. When something difficult happens, when you face adversity or trauma or overwhelming stress, your brain doesn't just record the event like a video camera. It reorganizes its entire structure around that experience. Neural pathways strengthen or weaken. Neurotransmitter systems recalibrate. Entire brain regions change in size and connectivity. And this reorganization can go one of two ways. It can make you more vulnerable to future stress, creating patterns of anxiety, depression, and fragility. Or it can make you more resilient, building neural networks that help you handle future challenges with greater ease and effectiveness. The difference comes down to how your brain processes adversity. Let's start with what happens during stress. When you perceive a threat, whether it's physical danger, social rejection, or any other challenge, a tiny almond-shaped structure deep in your brain called the amygdala activates. Think of it as your brain's alarm system. The moment the amygdala perceives threat, it triggers a cascade of responses designed to help you survive. It signals your hypothalamus to activate your sympathetic nervous system. Your adrenal glands release stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate increases, pumping more blood to your muscles. Your breathing accelerates, bringing more oxygen into your system. Your pupils dilate, sharpening your vision. Your muscles tense, preparing for action. Digestion slows or stops, conserving energy for immediate survival. Your immune system temporarily suppresses, because fighting infections isn't a priority when you're fighting for your life. This is your fight or flight response, and it's an incredibly sophisticated survival mechanism that's kept humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years. This system works perfectly for short-term physical threats. If you're running from a predator, fighting an attacker, or escaping a fire, this response is exactly what you need. It mobilizes all your resources for immediate action. Once the threat passes, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, returning everything to baseline. Heart rate slows, breathing normalizes, muscles relax, digestion resumes. You recover. But modern stressors aren't short-term physical threats. They're chronic psychological pressures. Job insecurity that lasts for months or years. Relationship problems that grind on indefinitely. Financial stress that never fully resolves. Health concerns that create constant worry. Social media comparison that delivers microdoses of inadequacy dozens of times daily. These threats don't resolve quickly, so your stress response doesn't shut off. And when your stress response is chronically activated, your brain starts changing in problematic ways. The amygdala, your alarm system, becomes hyperactive and enlarged. It starts perceiving threats everywhere, even in neutral situations. You become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for danger. Your threshold for activation lowers, so smaller and smaller things trigger your stress response. The hippocampus, responsible for memory formation and spatial navigation, actually shrinks under conditions of chronic stress. The sustained presence of cortisol is toxic to hippocampal neurons. This impairs your ability to form new memories, to learn from experience, to maintain perspective. It also impairs your ability to distinguish between past trauma and present reality, which is why traumatized people often react to current situations as if past trauma is happening now. The prefrontal cortex, the most recently evolved part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, emotional regulation, planning, and impulse control, goes offline during stress. Blood flow redirects away from this region toward more primitive survival centers. This is why you can't think clearly when you're stressed. Why you make impulsive decisions during crisis. Why you can't access your rational mind when you're emotionally activated. The result of these brain changes is a vicious cycle. Chronic stress makes your brain more reactive to stress, which generates more stress response, which further changes your brain in ways that increase stress reactivity. You become increasingly anxious, reactive, and unable to regulate your emotions. Your resilience deteriorates. But here's where it gets fascinating. Resilient people's brains respond to stress differently. They don't avoid the stress response. That's not possible and wouldn't be desirable. The stress response is adaptive and necessary. What's different is how quickly they can activate it when needed, and how effectively they can deactivate it when the threat has passed. Dr. Richard Davidson, a neuroscientist at the University of Wisconsin, has spent decades studying the brains of highly resilient individuals, including Buddhist monks, special forces soldiers, and people who have survived extreme adversity. His research reveals several consistent differences in brain structure and function. First, resilient individuals have stronger connections between their prefrontal cortex and amygdala. This means they can consciously regulate their threat response rather than being hijacked by it. When the amygdala signals danger, the prefrontal cortex can evaluate whether the threat is real and proportional, then modulate the response accordingly. They feel fear, but they're not controlled by fear. Second, resilient brains show higher vagal tone. The vagus nerve is the main component of your parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for the rest and digest response that counteracts fight or flight. High vagal tone means your body can quickly shift from activation to calm, from stress to recovery. You can get stressed when needed, then return to baseline efficiently. Low vagal tone means you stay activated long after threats have passed, or you're so chronically activated that you never fully recover. Third, resilient individuals show different patterns of brain activity during difficulty. When facing challenges, their brains don't show the pattern of rumination, the repetitive negative thinking that keeps non-resilient people stuck. Instead, they show activation in regions associated with reappraisal, the ability to reframe situations in ways that reduce the stress while maintaining accurate perception of reality. Fourth, they show greater activity in regions associated with approach motivation rather than avoidance motivation. When facing challenges, their brains activate systems that move toward goals rather than away from threats. This fundamentally changes how they experience adversity. Instead of how do I avoid this pain, they're oriented toward how do I navigate through this challenge? And here's the crucial part. These brain differences aren't genetic or fixed. They're the result of neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself based on experience throughout your entire life. Every experience you have, every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you take, physically changes your brain. Neurons that fire together wire together. Pathways that are used frequently strengthen. Pathways that aren't used weaken and eventually prune away. This means you can intentionally build resilience by creating the experiences that change your brain in resilient directions. When you practice emotional regulation, you're strengthening connections between your prefrontal cortex and amygdala. When you practice mindfulness, you're reducing activity in brain regions associated with rumination and increasing activity in regions associated with present moment awareness. When you reframe challenges, you're building neural networks that automatically look for opportunity in adversity. When you take action despite fear, you're teaching your brain that you can function even when anxious, which reduces anxiety's power over you. Dr. Dennis Charney, Dean of the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, conducted extensive research on extreme resilience. He studied Vietnam POWs who were tortured for years, Holocaust survivors, Special Forces soldiers who operate in the most dangerous conditions, and people who survived other extreme adversities. What he found was remarkable. These individuals didn't just return to baseline after trauma. They experienced what researchers call post-traumatic growth. They became stronger, more psychologically healthy, more appreciative of life, more clear about their values, and more capable than they were before the trauma. The trauma didn't just not break them. It made them better. The key mechanism is something called stress inoculation. Just like a vaccine exposes you to a small amount of a virus to build immunity, manageable stress exposure builds psychological immunity. Each time you successfully navigate a challenge, your brain learns a crucial lesson. I can handle difficult things. This belief, encoded in your neural pathways, changes everything. It's not positive thinking or self-deception. It's evidence-based confidence built through actual experience of successfully navigating challenges. When you face adversity and collapse into learned helplessness, your brain encodes, I am powerless. When things are hard, I fail. I'm not capable of handling challenges. These beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. You avoid challenges because you believe you'll fail. You don't develop capabilities because you're not practicing. You become increasingly fragile because you're not building strength. But when you face adversity and successfully navigate it, even imperfectly, your brain encodes, I have agency. My actions matter. I can influence outcomes even when I can't control everything. I'm capable of growth. These beliefs also become self-fulfilling prophecies, but in the opposite direction. You approach challenges because you believe you can handle them. You develop capabilities through practice. You become increasingly resilient because you're consistently building strength. This is why resilience researchers emphasize the importance of graduated exposure to challenge. You don't build resilience by being protected from all difficulty or by being thrown into overwhelming trauma. You build it through appropriately challenging experiences that stretch you slightly beyond your current capacity, allow you to succeed with effort, and build confidence for larger challenges. Think of it like physical training. You don't build muscle by never lifting anything or by immediately trying to lift 500 pounds. You build muscle by lifting weight that's challenging but manageable, progressively increasing the load as you get stronger. Emotional resilience works the same way. The implications of this neuroscience are profound. It means that your past doesn't determine your future. Even if you've been broken repeatedly, even if you feel fragile right now, even if you've never demonstrated resilience before, your brain remains plastic and changeable. You can build new neural pathways starting today. You can develop the brain of a resilient person through intentional practice. You're not stuck with the brain you have. Chapter 2. The 7 Pillars of Emotional Resilience. After decades of research studying thousands of resilient individuals across different cultures, contexts, and types of adversity, psychologists have identified 7 core capacities that consistently show up in people who demonstrate remarkable resilience. These aren't personality traits you're born with. They're learnable skills you can develop. These are the 7 pillars of emotional resilience. Master these, and you become nearly unbreakable. Pillar 1 is emotional regulation. Your capacity to experience intense emotions without being controlled by them. It's the ability to feel your feelings fully, without letting those feelings make your decisions or determine your behavior. Non-resilient people experience emotions as overwhelming forces that hijack them completely. When they feel angry, they become anger. They lash out, say things they regret, make decisions they later wish they hadn't. When they feel anxious, they become anxiety. They avoid, withdraw, let fear dictate their choices. When they feel sad, they become sadness. They collapse into depression, lose function, can't meet their responsibilities. Resilient people experience emotions differently. They feel anger without becoming angry. They notice, I'm experiencing anger right now, rather than I am angry. This subtle shift creates psychological distance between them and their emotional experience. The emotion is something they're experiencing, not something they are. This distance allows them to feel the emotion fully while still maintaining choice about how to respond. They can feel furious and still speak calmly. They can feel terrified and still take action. They can feel devastated and still show up for their responsibilities. This isn't emotional suppression. Suppression is pushing emotions down, pretending you don't feel them, using willpower to avoid experiencing feelings. Suppression doesn't work. It actually intensifies emotions over time and creates all kinds of psychological and physical problems. Emotional regulation is different. You feel the feeling completely. You allow it to be present, but you don't let it run the show. The key skill in emotional regulation is creating space between stimulus and response. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Most people have no space. Something happens, they feel an emotion, and they immediately react. Someone criticizes them, they feel hurt, they lash out defensively. Someone threatens them, they feel afraid, they collapse or flee. There's no pause, no conscious choice, just automatic reaction. Resilient people cultivate space. Something happens. They feel the emotion arise. They pause. They breathe. They observe what they're feeling. They consider their options. They choose their response based on their values and goals rather than just their emotions. Pillar 2 is cognitive flexibility. Your ability to shift perspectives, to see situations from multiple angles, to reframe challenges in ways that reduce suffering while maintaining accurate perception of reality. Cognitive rigidity is when you can see a situation from only one angle, and that angle feels like absolute truth. Non-resilient people get stuck in rigid narratives. When something bad happens, they have one story: this is terrible. I'm doomed. Everything is falling apart. This proves I'm inadequate. My life is ruined. That story feels like objective reality, rather than one possible interpretation. Cognitive flexibility allows you to see the same situation from multiple perspectives without denying reality. This is challenging and painful, and it might redirect me towards something better. This is a significant setback, and I've successfully navigated setbacks before. This reveals some of my limitations, and it also shows me what I need to develop. Dr. Martin Seligman's research on learned optimism versus learned helplessness reveals that how you explain negative events to yourself determines your resilience. He identifies three dimensions of explanatory style: permanent versus temporary, pervasive versus specific, and personal versus impersonal. People who explain setbacks as permanent, pervasive, and personal become helpless. I always fail at everything because I'm fundamentally flawed. This will never change. I'm doomed forever. This explanatory style creates depression and passivity. You feel helpless because you've explained the problem in ways that leave no room for change. People who explain setbacks as temporary, specific, and changeable remain resilient. This particular thing didn't work this time. I can learn from this and try differently. This says something about my current approach, not about my fundamental worth. This explanatory style maintains hope and agency. The situation is challenging, but not hopeless. You can influence outcomes even if you can't control everything. Pillar 3 is sense of purpose. Your connection to something larger than yourself that gives meaning to your struggle and reason to persist through difficulty. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz and wrote, "Man's search for meaning," based on his observation that prisoners who had a reason to survive were far more likely to make it. Those who lost their why died even when physical conditions were identical. Purpose gives you something to hold on to when everything else is falling apart. When you know why you're enduring difficulty, when you're connected to something larger than yourself, you can withstand almost anything. This is why people with strong spiritual beliefs, meaningful work, or deep commitments to family or causes show higher resilience. Purpose doesn't have to be grand or world-changing. It can be raising your children well, creating art that moves people, contributing to your community, building something that matters, pursuing mastery in your craft. The specific content matters less than the depth of your connection to it. When you have strong purpose, adversity becomes something you're moving through rather than something that's defeating you. Pillar 4 is social connection. Your network of genuine relationships that provide support, witness your experience, and remind you of your worth when you've forgotten it. Humans are fundamentally social creatures. We're literally wired for connection through mirror neurons, attachment systems, and neurotransmitter responses to social interaction. Isolation is one of the biggest predictors of poor mental health, while strong social connections are among the strongest protective factors against trauma, stress, and adversity. Resilient people have strong support networks, not necessarily large, but deep. They have people they can call at 3 a.m., people who truly see them, people who remind them of their worth when they've forgotten it. These connections don't solve your problems for you, but they witness your struggle, validate your experience, and remind you you're not alone. Research consistently shows that the single best predictor of resilience after trauma is quality of social support. Not intelligence, not resources, not personality traits. Social connection. This is why trauma that happens in isolation, like child abuse in families where no one intervenes, is so much more damaging than trauma that happens in community where people respond with support. Pillar 5 is growth mindset. Your belief that your abilities can develop through effort rather than being fixed traits. Dr. Carol Dweck's research distinguishes between fixed mindset, which says my abilities are set, failure proves I'm inadequate, and growth mindset, which says my abilities can develop, failure is feedback for growth. When someone with a growth mindset faces failure, they ask, what can I learn? When someone with a fixed mindset faces failure, they conclude, I'm not good enough. Same event, completely different processing, completely different outcomes. Resilient people see challenges as opportunities to develop new capabilities rather than threats to their ego. They understand that struggle is a mechanism of growth, not evidence of inadequacy. When something is difficult, it doesn't mean they're failing. It means they're at the edge of their current capacity, which is exactly where growth happens. Pillar 6 is self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to influence outcomes through your actions. It's not about believing everything will work out magically. It's about believing that your choices matter, that you have agency, that you can affect your circumstances even when you can't control them completely. Dr. Albert Bandura's research shows that self-efficacy is built through 4 sources. Mastery experiences where you successfully handle challenges, which provides direct evidence of capability. Vicarious experiences where you see others like you succeed, which shows that success is possible. Social persuasion where people you trust express faith in you, which provides external validation of your potential. and physiological states where you learn to interpret stress as energizing rather than debilitating, which changes how you respond to activation. Self-efficacy is perhaps the most powerful predictor of resilience because it determines whether you even try. If you don't believe your actions matter, you become passive. Why try if trying makes no difference? But when you believe your actions influence outcomes, you remain engaged even during difficulty. You keep trying different approaches. You persist through setbacks. You maintain agency. Pillar 7 is acceptance. Your ability to acknowledge reality as it actually is rather than fighting with the fact that it happened. This is the most misunderstood pillar. Acceptance doesn't mean liking what happened or agreeing it's okay. It means acknowledging what is without wasting energy denying it or arguing with reality. When you're in resistance, saying, "This shouldn't have happened, it's not fair, I can't believe this is my life," you're using all your energy fighting reality instead of responding to it. You're arguing with something that's already done, which is like standing in the rain, insisting it shouldn't be raining. The rain doesn't care about your protests. It's still raining. Acceptance frees up that energy. It allows you to say, "This is what's happening. I don't like it, but I'm not going to waste energy denying it. What do I do from here?" The serenity prayer captures this beautifully. Grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, courage to change what I can, and wisdom to know the difference. That's resilience in a nutshell. These 7 pillars work together synergistically. Emotional regulation helps you stay functional during crisis. Cognitive flexibility helps you reframe the situation. Purpose gives you reason to persist. Social connection prevents isolation and provides support. Growth mindset turns obstacles into opportunities. Self-efficacy gives you belief in your ability to navigate forward. And acceptance allows you to work with reality rather than against it. When you're strong in all 7 pillars, you become remarkably resilient. When you're weak in several, you become vulnerable. The good news is that you can strengthen any pillar through deliberate practice. Chapter 3, The Resilience Response. What to do when crisis hits. Theory is valuable, but what do you actually do when something terrible happens? When you just got fired? When your partner left? When you receive devastating news? When your world is falling apart and you can barely breathe? I'm going to give you a step-by-step framework you can use in real time during actual crises. This is the resilience response, and it works. Stage 1 is stabilize. When crisis hits, your first job isn't to fix anything or figure everything out. It's to stabilize your nervous system so you can think clearly. You cannot make good decisions from a dysregulated state. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part of your brain, goes offline during extreme stress. Blood flow redirects to survival centers. You literally cannot access good judgment, perspective, or problem-solving capacity when you're in fight or flight mode. So your first priority is getting regulated enough that your thinking brain can come back online. Immediate stabilization techniques. Box breathing. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Hold for 4. Repeat until you feel calmer. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and begins shifting you out of threat response. Physical grounding. Press your feet firmly into floor. Notice 5 things you can see. 4 things you can hear. 3 things you can touch. 2 things you can smell. 1 thing you can taste. This brings you out of panic and into your body, into present moment sensory experience instead of catastrophic future thinking. Temperature shift. Splash cold water on your face or hold ice cubes. This activates your mammalian dive reflex, which automatically slows your heart rate and calms your nervous system. Bilateral stimulation. Cross your arms and tap alternately on your shoulders or march in place, or do any rhythmic movement that crosses the midline of your body. This helps integrate left and right brain hemispheres and reduces activation. The goal here isn't to feel good. It's to get regulated enough that you can think rather than just react. You're bringing your nervous system down from extreme activation to manageable activation. Stage 2 is assess. Once you're stabilized enough to think, get clear on what's actually happening versus the story you're telling about it. Separate facts from interpretation. This is crucial because your mind, especially when stressed, will catastrophize. It will take a difficult situation, and make it worse by adding layers of interpretation that may not be true. Facts are verifiable, objective statements. I lost my job. My partner said they need space. I received a medical diagnosis. My bank account is overdrawn. These are things that actually happened. Interpretation is the meaning you're assigning to facts. I'm a failure who will never succeed. I'm unlovable and will die alone. I'm going to die. I'm financially ruined and will end up homeless. These are stories about what the facts mean, and they may or may not be true. Write down only the verifiable facts. What actually happened? Not what you think it means. Not what might happen. Not how you feel about it. Just what actually verifiably occurred. Then write down immediate consequences. What decisions need to be made right now versus later? What actions are actually required today? Most often, you'll find that the immediate requirements are far less overwhelming than your catastrophic thinking suggested. You lost your job. What needs to happen today? Maybe you need to file for unemployment. That's it. You don't need to solve your entire career today. You need to take one administrative step. What needs to happen today? Maybe you need to file for unemployment. That's it. You don't need to solve your entire career today. You need to take one administrative step. This assessment prevents catastrophizing and helps you see the situation more accurately. Stage 3 is inventory resources. Crisis makes you feel helpless and depleted. Your brain focuses exclusively on what's wrong, what you lack, what's been lost. Consciously identifying what you DOF counteracts this. Ask yourself these questions. What strengths do I have that can help here? Maybe you're resourceful, persistent, good at research, skilled at asking for help, experienced at handling uncertainty. What have I successfully handled in the past that's similar? You probably navigated difficulty before. What did you do then? What capabilities did you demonstrate? That capability still exists. Who in my life can support me? Even one person matters. Someone you can talk to. Someone who believes in you. Someone who can provide practical help. What resources, financial, informational, practical, are available? Maybe you have savings. Maybe you have skills that are marketable. Maybe you have access to information or systems that can help. What small action could I take today? Even tiny actions break the paralysis of helplessness. This inventory shifts you from I'm helpless to I have capabilities and resources. You may not have everything you need, but you have something, and something is enough to start. Stage 4 is take one step. Don't try to solve everything. Don't create an elaborate plan for the next 6 months. Just take the next smallest step forward. When you're overwhelmed, your brain needs evidence that forward movement is possible. Every time you're stuck in helplessness, your brain is running a program that says, nothing I do matters. I can't affect outcomes. I'm powerless. Taking action, even tiny action, provides counter-evidence. It proves I can act even when I'm scared. I'm not completely powerless. Maybe it's making one phone call, updating your resume, having one difficult conversation, going for a walk, cleaning one room, sending one email. The specific action matters less than the fact that you're taking action. You're demonstrating to your brain that you still have agency. This builds momentum. One step leads to another, then another, but you don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the step in front of you. Stage 5 is process emotions. After you've taken initial action, you need to actually feel what you're feeling. Resilient people don't avoid their feelings. They don't suppress, deny, or distract. They make space for emotions to move through them. They cry. They rage. They grieve. They let themselves feel the full weight of what's happened. But they do this consciously and safely, not by being hijacked during critical decision-making. Find appropriate outlets like journal. Let everything pour out onto the page. Talk to trusted people who can hold space for your feelings without trying to fix or minimize them. Physical exercise that allows emotional release. Running, boxing, dancing. Anything that lets you move the energy. Creative expression. Art, music, writing that expresses what you're feeling. The goal is emotional completion, the full feeling and release of emotion, so it doesn't get stored in your body. Emotions are designed to move through you. That's why they're called emotions, energy in motion. When you let them complete their cycle, they pass. When you interrupt or suppress them, they get stuck. Stage 6 is extract meaning. Once the acute crisis is passed and you process initial emotions, ask what the situation is teaching you. How might this difficult experience serve your growth? What capabilities are you developing by going through this? This isn't toxic positivity. It's refusing to let painful experiences be purely destructive. If you're going through hell anyway, you might as well extract something valuable from it. Research on post-traumatic growth, conducted by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, shows that people who find meaning in adversity don't just recover, they transcend their previous baseline. They report 5 areas of growth: greater appreciation for life and change priorities, warmer, more intimate relationships, greater sense of personal strength, I'm more capable than I thought, recognition of new possibilities and paths, deeper spiritual or existential development. You don't create this meaning artificially. You discover it by reflecting on your experience. Stage 7 is integrate and strengthen. The final stage is using this experience to build even greater resilience for the future. Document what worked. What helped you get through this? What resources did you discover? What strengths did you demonstrate? This creates evidence of your capability that you can reference during future challenges. Then identify what you need to strengthen. Maybe you realize you need better emotional regulation skills. Maybe you need to build stronger social connections. Maybe you need to develop new practical capabilities. Chapter 4. Daily practices that build unshakable resilience. The best time to build resilience isn't during crisis. It's before crisis. Just like you don't wait until you're drowning to learn to swim, you don't wait until you're broken to build emotional strength. Daily practices, done consistently over time, create compound resilience that makes you exponentially more capable of handling whatever life throws at you. I'm going to give you 5 daily practices that, if you do them consistently, will fundamentally transform your capacity for resilience. Practice 1 is voluntary discomfort. Deliberately exposing yourself to manageable challenges that build stress tolerance. Think of this as emotional weight training. You're not traumatizing yourself. You're building capacity through graduated exposure to discomfort in controlled doses. Examples of voluntary discomfort: cold exposure. Take cold showers. Start warm, then turn the water cold for the last 30 to 60 seconds. This trains your nervous system to handle discomfort without panic. Your initial response will be to gasp, to want to escape. But if you breathe through it, stay present, and allow the discomfort without resistance, you're training a crucial skill: the ability to be uncomfortable without making it an emergency. Difficult conversations. Address small conflicts instead of avoiding them. Practice saying what you actually think even when it's uncomfortable. Set boundaries that feel risky. Each time you do this, you're proving to yourself that discomfort won't destroy you. Challenging workouts. Push yourself physically to levels that are uncomfortable but not injurious. When you're tired and want to quit, keep going for 1 more minute. You're training mental toughness, the ability to do what you committed to even when it's hard. Intermittent fasting. Skip a meal occasionally. Experience hunger without immediately satisfying it. This builds tolerance for physical discomfort and proves that discomfort is temporary, manageable, and won't harm you. Public speaking or social challenges. Do things that make you anxious in controlled ways. Give a presentation. Approach strangers. Perform. Each exposure makes the next one slightly less terrifying. Strategic, saying no. Disappoint people by setting boundaries. Disappoint yourself by not always taking a comfortable path. This builds tolerance for the discomfort of not being liked or not getting what you want immediately. The principle is simple. Small doses of chosen discomfort build capacity for handling unchosen discomfort. When crisis hits, you'll have practice being uncomfortable, which makes you far more capable of staying functional. Practice 2 is resilience journaling, specifically designed writing that rewires how your brain processes challenges. Each evening, write briefly on these prompts. 1 challenge I face a day and how I handled it. This trains you to see yourself as someone who handles challenges rather than someone who's overwhelmed by them. Even small challenges count. You had a difficult conversation. You pushed through when you wanted to quit. You managed anxiety without avoiding. Evidence of my strength, capability, or growth. What did you do today that demonstrates you're capable? Maybe you helped someone. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you kept going when it was hard. Your brain naturally focuses on what's wrong. This practice trains it to also scan for what's right, what's working, what you're capable of, what I'm grateful for despite difficulties. Gratitude isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about acknowledging that even in difficult circumstances, there are things worth appreciating. The fact that you have one person who cares. The fact that you have shelter. The fact that you're still here, still trying. One thing I learned today. What did this day teach you? Maybe you learned something about yourself. Maybe you learned a practical skill. Maybe you learned what doesn't work, which is valuable information. This frames every day as containing learning, which supports growth mindset. How I showed up as the person I want to become. This isn't about perfection. It's about direction. In what small ways did you act consistently with your values today? Maybe you were kind when you felt like being cruel. Maybe you were honest when lying would have been easier. Maybe you tried when giving up was tempting. Over time, this practice fundamentally rewires your brain. You're training your attention to focus on capability, growth, resources, and values-aligned action rather than exclusively on problems, failures, deficits, and inadequacy. Practice 3 is meditation and mindfulness, training your attention and your relationship with your inner experience. The research on meditation and resilience is overwhelming. Regular meditation literally changes brain structure in ways that enhance every pillar of resilience. It strengthens connections between prefrontal cortex and amygdala, improving emotional regulation. It increases gray matter density in regions associated with perspective taking, compassion, and stress regulation. You don't need hours. Start with just 10 minutes daily. Simple focused attention meditation is sufficient. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Bring attention to your breath. Notice the sensation of breathing. In and out. That's it. Your mind will wander. This is not failure. This is what minds do. The practice is noticing your mind has wandered and gently returning attention to breath. Not with frustration or judgment, just with patient redirection. You're training the mental muscle of attention control. The wandering isn't the problem. The endless following of wandering is the problem. Each time you notice wandering and return to breath, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex's ability to direct attention rather than being hijacked by whatever thought arises. This capacity transfers to emotional regulation. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're the awareness that can observe these experiences. This creates space between you and your inner experience, which is a foundation of resilience. Mindfulness practice extends this into daily life. Throughout your day, pause and notice what you're experiencing right now. What you see, hear, feel, smell, taste? What sensations are in your body? What emotions are present? You're training present moment awareness rather than living exclusively in regret about the past or anxiety about the future. Most suffering happens in our thinking about situations rather than in the situations themselves. Right now, in this present moment, you're probably okay. Practice 4 is social connection maintenance, deliberately investing in relationships before you need them. Resilience isn't built alone. Social support is one of the strongest predictors of resilience, but you can't build relationships in emergency mode. You build them in daily mode, so they're there when crisis hits. Weekly practices for connection maintenance. Reach out to one person just to connect, not because you need something. A text, a call, a coffee. I was thinking of you. How are you? This maintains and deepens relationships. Have at least one meaningful conversation where you go beyond surface level. Instead of, how are you? Fine. Go deeper. What's been challenging for you lately? What are you excited about? What's on your mind? Express appreciation to someone who matters to you. Be specific. Not just, thanks for being a good friend, but I really appreciate how you listened without judgment when I was struggling last week. That meant a lot to me. Be vulnerable about something real you're experiencing. Share something you're worried about, struggling with, or processing. Vulnerability builds intimacy. It signals to others that it's safe to be real with you. Ask for help with something small. This might seem counterintuitive, but asking for and receiving help actually strengthens relationships. It gives others opportunity to contribute to you, which makes them feel valued and creates reciprocity. The goal is building genuine connections that can support you during crisis. But this requires consistent maintenance. You can't ignore relationships for months, then expect people to be there when you're in crisis. Connection is built through repeated small interactions over time. Practice 5 is continuous learning and growth. Resilient people see themselves as perpetually developing, not as finished products. When you're constantly learning, you have evidence that you can develop new capabilities, which makes challenges feel surmountable. Daily learning practices. Read for at least 20 minutes. Books, articles, anything that expands your knowledge or capabilities. Reading about psychology makes you better at understanding yourself and others. Reading about history gives you perspective on current challenges. Reading about people who overcame adversity provides models and inspiration. Learn one new thing daily. Watch a tutorial. Practice a skill. Research a topic you know nothing about. The specific content matters less than the fact that you're in learning mode. Take courses or develop new skills. Sign up for classes. Learn a language, an instrument, a craft, a technical skill. Each new capability you develop proves that growth is possible, which strengthens your belief in your capacity for development. Seek feedback and use it for growth. Ask people you trust, what's one thing I could do better? When you receive feedback, resist the urge to defend or explain. Just listen. Say thank you and consider whether there's truth in it. Approach someone new. Each time you do something outside your comfort zone, you're expanding what feels comfortable. Reflect on experiences to extract lessons. This transforms every experience into education. These 5 practices work through compound effect. None of them is magical by itself, but done consistently over months and years, they create exponential resilience. Small daily deposits don't seem significant, but over time they create enormous wealth. These practices are your daily deposits into your resilience account. When crisis hits, and it will hit, you'll have accumulated resources that make you capable of handling what would have destroyed the unprepared version of you. Chapter 5. Resilience across different types of adversity. Not all adversity is the same. The resilience needed for sudden trauma is different from resilience needed for chronic stress. Understanding these differences helps you apply resilience principles effectively to your specific situation. Acute crisis resilience. Acute crises are sudden events that disrupt your entire reality. Job loss, breakup, death of loved one, accident, medical diagnosis, trauma. These are shock events that weren't anticipated and change everything instantly. Acute crisis resilience prioritizes immediate nervous system stabilization. You're in shock. Your body is flooded with stress hormones. Your thinking is impaired. Before you can do anything else, you need to get regulated enough to function. Use the stabilization techniques from Chapter 3 intensively. Box breathing every hour. Physical grounding repeatedly throughout the day. Cold water on face when panic rises. You're bringing your nervous system down from extreme activation. Social support activation is crucial. Don't isolate. Reach out immediately to people who care about you. You need witnessing validation and support. Your instinct might be to withdraw and handle alone, but isolation makes acute crisis worse. Let people know what happened. Let them help. Practical action focus. Handle immediate necessities before worrying about big picture. What absolutely must be done today? File paperwork. Make necessary phone calls. Handle urgent logistics. Break everything down to smallest possible steps. You can't solve your entire life during acute crisis, but you can take the next small action. Grief space. Allow yourself to fall apart in safe containers. You don't need to be strong all the time. Schedule time to let yourself feel everything. Cry, rage, grieve, then stabilize and handle what needs handling. The danger with acute crisis is either total paralysis where you can't function at all, or manic action where you make major decisions without processing what happened. Chronic stress resilience. Chronic stress is ongoing pressure without clear endpoint. Financial struggle. Difficult relationship. Health issues. Demanding job. Caretaking responsibilities. These are long-term challenges that grind you down over time. Chronic stress resilience requires sustainable pacing. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You can't stay in emergency mode indefinitely without burning out. You need to find a pace you can maintain. This might mean doing less than you think you should, accepting that progress will be slow, building in rest even when it feels like you can't afford it. Chronic stress resilience means managing your energy wisely for the long haul. Multiple business failures, repeated rejection, serial relationship endings, ongoing setbacks in pursuit of goals. This type of adversity specifically threatens your sense of efficacy and your growth mindset. Repeated failure resilience requires perspective on iteration. Edison didn't fail 10,000 times at the light bulb. He found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Each failure is data. What did this attempt teach you? What can you adjust? Failure isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's feedback about your approach. Reframing failure as iteration maintains your agency. You're not failing. You're learning. Self-efficacy protection. The biggest danger with repeated failure is concluding that your actions don't matter, that you're powerless, that trying is pointless. This is learned helplessness. You must protect your belief that your actions influence outcomes, even when current outcomes aren't what you wanted. Distinguish between effort and outcome. You can control your effort. You can't always control outcomes because outcomes depend on many factors beyond your control. Judge yourself by the quality of your effort and the wisdom of your learning, not only by outcomes. Process over outcome focus. Instead of measuring success only by results, measure it by whether you're learning, growing, improving your approach, staying engaged. Are you better at this than you were 6 months ago? That's success even if you haven't achieved the ultimate goal yet. Peer support. Surround yourself with others who understand the journey. Entrepreneurship groups, artist communities, people pursuing similar difficult goals. When everyone around you has a straight path to success, your winding path feels like failure. When you're around people who also face setbacks, you normalize struggle as part of any worthwhile pursuit. The danger with repeated failure is learned helplessness, concluding that your actions don't matter and giving up. Repeated failure resilience means maintaining your agency, learning from each attempt, and persisting intelligently rather than just stubbornly. Betrayal and relationship resilience. Betrayal is when someone you trusted violates that trust. Infidelity, broken promises, friendship ending, family dysfunction, workplace betrayal. This type of adversity specifically damages your ability to trust and connect. Betrayal resilience requires grief for what was lost. You lost the relationship you thought you had. Even if the relationship continues, the version of it where you felt safe is gone. You need to mourn that loss. Grieve the person you thought they were. Grieve the future you imagined. Grieve your own innocence about this relationship. Allow yourself to feel the full weight of disappointment, hurt, and anger. Trust rebuilding starting with self. Before you can trust others again, you need to trust yourself. You're probably questioning your own judgment. How did I not see this? What's wrong with me that I trusted someone untrustworthy? Rebuild trust in yourself by acknowledging that you made reasonable decisions with the information available at the time. You weren't stupid or naive. You trusted someone who showed themselves trustworthy until they proved otherwise. Boundary recalibration. What boundaries do you need going forward? Maybe you need more time before trusting. Maybe you need more evidence of trustworthiness. Maybe you need different criteria for who you let close. This isn't about becoming cynical or closed off. It's about appropriate discernment based on what you've learned. Meaning making. What does this betrayal mean? The danger is concluding, no one can be trusted. I'm unworthy of loyalty. Relationships are fundamentally unsafe. These meanings make future relationships impossible. Alternative meanings. This person violated trust. That says something about them, not about all people. I'm worthy of trustworthy relationships. This experience taught me what red flags to watch for. The danger of betrayal is either never trusting again, which prevents genuine connection, or immediately trusting without appropriate discernment, which sets you up for repeated betrayal. Betrayal resilience means learning to trust again wisely. Identity crisis resilience. Identity crisis happens when who you've been no longer works, but who you're becoming isn't clear yet. career change, retirement, empty nest, coming out, major life transition, health crisis that changes capabilities, loss of role or identity. This type of adversity creates existential disorientation. Identity crisis resilience requires tolerance for ambiguity. Identity crisis happens when who you've been no longer works, but who you're becoming isn't clear yet. Career change, retirement, empty nest, coming out, major life transition. Being okay not knowing who you are for a while. Not rushing to grab a new identity just to escape the discomfort of being in between. This in-between space, what anthropologists call liminal space, is where transformation happens. It's uncomfortable because you're shedding an old identity without having a new one yet. But rushing through it prevents real transformation. Try new things without pressure to commit. You're exploring who you might become, not choosing who you'll be forever. Some things won't fit. That's valuable information. Some things will resonate. That's valuable information too. Give yourself permission to experiment. Be patient with yourself. You'll feel lost sometimes. You'll miss your old identity even if it wasn't working anymore. Treat yourself with the compassion you'd offer a friend going through major life change. The danger with identity crisis is either clinging to old identity past its expiration date, which prevents necessary evolution, or rushing into new identity without real exploration, which means you might grab something that doesn't actually fit. Chapter 6. When resilience fails, rebuilding after breakdown. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, you break. Your resources are depleted. You collapse into depression, anxiety, or complete dysfunction. And that's okay. Breakdown isn't the opposite of resilience. It's often part of the resilience journey. Everyone has breaking points. What makes someone resilient isn't that they never break. It's how they rebuild after breaking. First, understand that breaking down doesn't mean you're weak or that you failed at resilience. It means you're human. Extreme trauma. Loss after loss with no recovery time. These can break anyone. Some of the most resilient people have been through complete breakdowns. They've hit rock bottom, fallen completely apart, lost all function. What makes them resilient isn't that they avoided breaking. It's that they found a way back. They rebuilt themselves, often into someone stronger than they were before. The rebuilding process. Rebuilding after breakdown starts with acceptance. Fighting with the reality of your breakdown keeps you stuck in shame and self-blame. I shouldn't have broken. What's wrong with me? I'm so weak. This self-judgment prevents healing. Acknowledge I broke. That's what happened. I'm not going to waste energy judging myself for it. What now? This radical acceptance of what allows forward movement. Next is assessing what broke and why. You can't rebuild quickly. Don't try. After significant breakdown, you start with the most basic foundations. Sleep. 8 hours nightly non-negotiable. Sleep deprivation makes everything worse. It impairs emotional regulation, decision-making, and physical health. Nutrition. Eat regular meals with actual nutritional value. Depression and anxiety often involve appetite changes, either eating too much or too little. Commit to baseline adequate nutrition, even when you don't feel like it. Your brain needs fuel to function. Movement. Move your body daily. Not intense exercise necessarily, though that's fine if you're capable. Even gentle movement, walking, stretching, helps. Movement reduces stress hormones, improves mood, and gives you sense of agency. Social connection. Maintain contact with at least one person regularly. Isolation makes breakdown worse. Even if you don't feel like connecting, even if you don't think you have anything to offer, maintain connection. These aren't optional extras. They're the foundation everything else sits on. When you're depleted, you start here. Think of yourself as recovering from serious injury. You don't immediately run marathons. You start with basic movement. You rebuild gradually. You respect that healing takes time. Seeking professional support. This is often when professional help becomes necessary. If you've had complete breakdown, major depression, severe anxiety, crisis of suicidal ideation, you need more than self-help. You need therapy, possibly medication. Definitely support from people with clinical expertise. There's no shame in this. You wouldn't try to treat a compound fracture with positive thinking. Major psychological breakdown sometimes requires professional intervention. Therapy provides external structure when your internal structure has collapsed. It provides perspective when you've lost all perspective. It provides evidence-based strategies when your own strategies have failed. Medication, when appropriate, can stabilize brain chemistry enough that other interventions can work. If your neurotransmitters are severely dysregulated, willpower alone won't fix that. Medication isn't a sign of weakness. It's a tool that makes healing possible. Resilience includes knowing when you need help beyond your own resources. Asking for help, accepting help, using help, these are signs of strength, not weakness. Gradual exposure. As you rebuild, use gradual exposure to life's demands. Don't immediately throw yourself back into full responsibility. Start small. If work was overwhelming, maybe you start with reduced hours or lighter responsibilities while you rebuild capacity. If relationships were difficult, maybe you start with low-stakes social connection before deep intimacy. If challenges felt insurmountable, maybe you start with small, manageable challenges before big ones. You're rebuilding tolerance, not proving toughness. Each small success rebuilds confidence. Each small step forward rebuilds self-efficacy. You're training your nervous system that you can handle things again, starting with easy things and gradually progressing to harder things. This isn't coddling yourself. It's intelligent rehabilitation, extracting wisdom from breakdown. Once you have some stability, extract wisdom from the experience. What did this breakdown teach you? What do you understand now that you didn't before? About your limits, about what you need, about what's sustainable and what isn't, about who shows up and who doesn't, about what truly matters. Breakdown is often a message that something in your life is unsustainable. Maybe you've been neglecting your needs. Maybe you're in circumstances that don't serve you. Maybe you're carrying more than any human reasonably could. Maybe you've been living according to values that aren't actually yours. Breakdown gives you opportunity to reorganize your life more wisely. Many people report that breakdown, while terrible to experience, was necessary for them to become who they needed to become. It forced them to shed patterns that weren't working. It clarified what truly matters. It showed them who they really are beneath all the performance. Post-traumatic growth. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that many people who experience complete breakdown eventually report that it led profound positive changes. Not that breakdown was good, but that they grew through the process of navigating it. 5 domains of post-traumatic growth. Greater appreciation for life and change priorities. What seemed urgent before breakdown feels less important. What seemed unimportant feels crucial. Warmer, more intimate relationships. Crisis reveals who's really there for you.